All right, guys, this is a story that gives me no pleasure to report on. And frankly, I just think it's extremely sad. But we have new reporting from a really strong and frankly courageous reporter at New York Magazine on some alleged misuse of funds by the Black Lives Matter Global Foundation. So let's put this first tear sheet up on the screen. So here is the headline. Black Lives Matter secretly bought a $6 million house. Allies and critics alike have questioned where the organization's money has gone. The reporter here is Sean Campbell, who this is kind of a follow-up on another in-depth investigation that he had done into the financial management or mismanagement of Black Lives Matter. And effectively what happened was this, and then I'll get to the specifics of this story. So, after George Floyd was murdered, of course, there was a national outcry about the horror of that situation. And there were a lot of good people who said, I want to be part of a solution. I want to do something. I want to change the country. And the group that kind of became the catch-all for all of that energy was the Black Lives Matter Global Foundation. They raised something like $90 million, okay? Tens of millions of dollars flooding into this organization from people who saw this atrocity and said, how can I be a part of a solution? And lo and behold, now that we've gotten down the road, we've learned a lot about the fact that, first of all, they were not supporting, oftentimes, the activists on the ground. In this particular instance, what Sean Campbell, this journalist, is highlighting is that they purchased a $6 million house mansion in California. If you look at the pictures of it, which are available online, it's quite an extraordinary property. When they were asked about what is this supposed to be used for, they circulated this internal memo of like, oh my God, how do we deal with this story? And I just want to read to you this part because I think this is very revealing. They say that on March 30th, I asked the organization questions about the house, which is known internally as Campus. Afterwards, leaders circulated an internal strategy memo with possible responses ranging from, can we kill the story, to, quote, our angle needs to be to deflate ownership of the property. The memo includes bullet points explaining that, quote, Campus is part of cultural arm of the org, potentially as an influencer house where abolition-based content is produced by artists and creatives. Another bullet is headed accounting/990 modifications. That's a nonprofit tax filing, and reads in part, need to first make sure it's legally okay to use as we plan to use it. The memo also describes the property as a, quote, safe house for leaders whose safety has been threatened. The two notions that the house is simultaneously a confidential refuge and a place for broadcasting to the widest possible audience are somewhat in tension. In the memo notes, holes in security story, use in public YouTube videos, because this had been the setting of some public YouTube videos that had posted to one of the founders' private YouTube accounts already. Again, I want to emphasize that a lot of the concerns about the mismanagement of funds came from local chapters and on-the-ground organizers, some of whom are in poverty, struggling to make rent, some of whom have even been made homeless because they haven't received support from the national outlet that they're supposedly affiliated with. So you had 10 city chapters that issued a public statement back in 2020 rebuking the global network for its opacity. You had families of some Black victims of police violence complaining that they've seen little of the funds that have flowed to the movement's most visible facet. And let me go ahead and put this original article up on the screen because there's another piece of this that I think is really revealing, which is a local activist that this journalist, Sean Campbell, spoke with, talked about how he was planning a counter protest to like this KKK white nationalist rally that was happening in California. And so he was going to go as a more militant action, be there on the ground, counter protesting, kind of in their faces, really standing directly up to the face of hatred in America. And not only did the national organization not support him, they actually told him to stand down. Why? Because on the same day, the national organization was doing an online F white supremacy, let's get free streaming event sponsored by UGG, the California boot company, described as a worldwide electric slide. So instead of doing the on the ground, in your face, more militant, direct local action, they're saying, no, 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 you can't do that. because we want to do our corporate UGG-sponsored electric slide competition. And I'll remind you that the founders here describe themselves as Marxist. So that's what's going on. There's a lot of questions about how this money, what has happened with this money. They have not filed the forms that, should have revealed where the money went and how they have spent it. And however you feel about Black Lives Matter, this started as a sort of more radical organization that had a fundamental critique that I really agree with, that had to do with wages and housing and labor and actual true freedom. And now it's like devolved into this corporate managed thing where they're buying $1 million mansions and leaving the local organizers to hang out to dry. And it is really sad because you genuinely had people who were good-hearted, who thought they were doing the right thing. And I don't think this is how they expected their funds to be spent.
I think that's the most disgusting part about it. Look, not a secret how I feel about BLM, but at the end of the day, it's a free country and people's money is being donated to something that they care about, and it's a scam. This is really the problem, which is that these people stole millions of dollars and are misusing it. What's even more disgusting is that the reporter, Sean Campbell, himself as a Black man, was accused of racism for reporting this. And sexism.
Yeah.
They called him a racist and a sexist for reporting on their stealing, let's call it what it is, okay, alleged for the lawyers of BLM, because I'm sure they can afford it. It's people who literally took this money, misused it, putting all these corporate dealings, refused to answer any of the questions. But I really encourage everybody to go and read both of these New York Magazine articles, because on both of them, they're both multi-thousand words. And when you see they're conspiring about how to paint those mansions, you're like, this is insane.
There's another piece of this that's insane, which is that so the New York Post, I think, was the first outlet to report on one of the founders, Patrisse Cullors, had bought like 3 different houses.
Right.
And they reported on this. And she managed to use her connections to get this labeled as abusive content. And you can't post it on Facebook, Meta, whatever the hell it's called now, which is also pretty extraordinary. I do want to read in part her response, so we can be even-handed here. She says, and by the way, she's no longer with the organization, basically. After the first questions of financial mismanagement came out, she stepped down / was forced down, and we'll get to who's taken over the organization now, which is also very revealing. But what she said in part is yesterday's article in New York Magazine is a despicable abuse of a platform that's intended to provide truthful information to the public. Journalism is supposed to mitigate harm and inform our communities. That the fact that a reputable publication would allow a reporter with a very proven and public bias against me and other Black leaders to write a piece filled with misinformation, innuendo, and incendiary opinions is disheartening and unacceptable. I think the truth is, the fact that there has been so little reporting on this is really kind of a disgrace. And we see the way that, that Sean has been treated here, smeared as personally like racist and misogynistic, tells you why people haven't wanted to touch this. And again, the original complaints didn't come from journalists, didn't come from Right Wing or New York Post or any of that. It came from the organizers on the ground, 10 city chapters, and mothers who had lost their sons to police violence who said, don't use our names anymore for your fundraising. That's where the original concerns came from. They have taken donate links off of their website. Amazon has kicked them off of their partnership program thing. So this is definitely a real story. And again, what I want to impress upon you is that it is really unfair to the people who gave money and thought that it was going to go to on-the-ground organizing and actual local politics, and has instead been used in these other ways. So the last piece of this that harkens back to what I was saying about, I don't know why I'm saying the word harkens today a lot, but anyway, that's
a great word.
That harkens back to what I was saying about the UGG corporate-sponsored electric slide competition is now you officially have had a Clintonworld takeover of Black Lives Matter, making it sort of officially into this just like hollow corporate-controlled neoliberal thing from whatever its radical Marxist roots originally were. Let's put this tear sheet up on the screen. So the lawyer now for this organization that is trying to keep them out of any sort of legal jeopardy and clean up whatever financial messes there are to clean up is Mark Elias Is that how you say his
Yes.
last name?
Yes.
Best known for his funding of the
Yep.
Steele dossier. This guy was a Clinton lawyer, funded the Steele dossier, and now he's been brought in as official legal counsel. But there's more. Mignon Moore, who I don't know if you guys know who she is, but she is a longtime, like, DC A-lister, Clintonworld operative with Bill and with Hillary. She has now been brought on to the board of directors. So to me, it really is sad because any sort of radical critique here that was more fundamental, that was about wages, houses, unions, labor, and racial justice, that has all been, a sort of like capitalist critique. That has now clearly all been stripped aside, and it's a completely corporate-aligned entity at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that's probably the enduring legacy of what a lot of this is. And that's sad if you did care about that in the beginning. So I think you can just look at this. It's a gigantic scam perpetrated on a lot of well-meaning people. I mean, like I said, I even disagree, but a lot of my neighbors have BLM stickers and stuff, and they, I'm sure, donated a lot of money to these campaigns, and that's wrong. Look, that's, these hardworking people's money, and it's misused from what they wanted. And I think that anything that is used towards that end is just completely wrong. It's just wrong, immorally, in order to exploit somebody's legitimate or illegitimate moral outrage and then take their money and use it for nefarious purposes and then have the audacity to call somebody a racist.
I mean, look, I think everybody's outrage over what happened to George Floyd was extremely legitimate. Yeah. I mean, it really was this sort of like revealing moment of grappling with how abusive and unfair and racist the system can be. And so when you have that, I think part of what happened too is that because you didn't have a lot of like specific political aims, okay, here's the agenda, it made it very easy to be captured by the Jamie Dimons of the world and, to be like channeled by Nancy Pelosi kneeling in kente cloth because they were able to sort of make it whatever was convenient for them. And now you see the end stage of that with Clinton people taking over the organization and
just like Me Too. These people are like rats. They really do find themselves everywhere.
It's sad. Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.